Happy Taco Tuesday! I have a very fun activity for us today. So first things first, grab a sheet of paper. Blank, you can rip it out of your notebook. Any piece of paper, it can be a old piece of paper with writing on it, anything. What we're gonna do is make a paper plane. All right, however you know how to make it, don't worry about being perfect, but just take about a minute to make a plane. Should put some Jeopardy music on. I'll spare you my humming. Okay. So just the best paper airplane you can make. Don't half-ass it. Really pour your heart and soul into it. If you're watching this with a spouse, a friend, a sibling, you know, perhaps it's a nice little competition you'll have. So really try hard here. Okay. We're getting close. About 10 more seconds. If you're really struggling, you can always pause it. Google how to make a paper airplane and then return. All right, got your paper airplane. Cool. Now, I want you to take 5 large steps back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm as far back as I can go. Now, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna come a little closer, explain the rules, is I want you to imagine hitting the screen. Hopefully it's not a little iPhone. Hopefully it's some sort of big screen, but maybe it's an iPhone, with your plane. Close your eyes, visualize it. Don't do a practice run, but you can go through the motion. Imagine yourself hitting the screen. The screen is the target, okay? Go back to my spot. On the count of 3, we're gonna throw. Ready? 1, 2, 3, throw! Oh, wow. Well, maybe one of you out there, maybe a few actually hit the target. I did not. Mine hit the wall, came down, and it's on the floor. So the paper plane is a metaphor. The paper plane game is a metaphor for our intention and reality. So all of our intention was to hit the screen. Probably for most of us, that didn't happen. So this is what happens all the time in our lives. We think something, we interpret something one way, we perceive something one way, when in fact the reality of the situation is totally different. There's a quote I like by Michael Lewis, who is author of Liar's Poker, The Blind Side, The Big Short, Moneyball, which many of his books have turned into feature films. He was on Tim Ferriss's podcast a few weeks ago, and he said, anybody who writes a book learns that you write a book, but the reader reads a book, and the reader may read a book that's entirely different from what you thought you wrote, and you can't really do that much about it. So that's true when you're an author and you write a book and it gets in someone else's hands, and the reader, maybe they go to your Facebook and ask you a question and you get contact with the author. The difference between, say, an author, a reader, and us in our everyday life is that we actually have the opportunity to clarify what we mean, to ask a question to someone. So instead of making an assumption about what someone meant, we should always make the assumption that we did not understand what they meant, right? So now we're gonna try one more time. So grab your airplane. Hopefully it's still in working condition. You might have a little bent nose there. It's okay, you can flatten it out. So the idea being here is take your 5 steps back, and then we're gonna take 2 steps forward, and each step represents clarifying, either asking a question to clarify what someone else meant, or adding another sentence or phrase or way of communicating to clarify what you meant. Okay, so here we go. Back, back, back. Okay, so now that we take a step forward because we asked a question. Okay, take another step forward because we demonstrated something. Do you mean like this? And they say yes or no. Okay, now look at the screen. Hopefully it's better. Intend. I'm gonna hit the screen. I'm gonna hit the screen. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, throw! Yeah! Victory! I got it. Hopefully you guys did well too. It's okay if you didn't hit the screen. You can keep practicing later today. But the point of the activity is just a reminder that when we send out our intention or we say something or we do something, this happens to me all the time because I think people are in my head knowing what I mean. So I skip a lot of details. Just remember the paper airplane exercise. Take your steps closer. Clarify what you mean. Clarify by asking a question. Never make an assumption unless the assumption is that you have no clue what they're talking about. Okay? Now comes the really fun part, the challenge. So I want you can open up your airplane if you want, or you can grab another piece of paper. And I want you to think about the past week, maybe the past 2 months of COVID, being in close quarters with your loved ones. I want you to write down something that's driving you crazy that someone else is doing. Yes, we're going to point our fingers at someone else. So perhaps it's someone leaves the cabinet doors open or the dresser drawers. No, I'm not talking about a certain someone. No. Maybe someone leaves their cups all over the house. Maybe someone is always late, always 15, 20 minutes late. Again, I'm not talking about a specific someone. I'm just talking about the most common pet peeves I hear when I do these trainings. Another one, a really common one I hear, namely from men, is that their significant others tend to move things. So if they leave their keys in a certain spot, the wife or significant other might put the keys in the junk drawer or the spot that the wife has designated where the keys go. Okay, so write down what's really driving you mad. And hopefully this is something that drives you mad almost every day. Something that happens so you can practice it more. All right, you got it? I'm going to read you a little passage from this really cool book from 1959 called From Here to Greater Happiness, or How to Change Your Life for Good. It's by Champion Touche. Toish. I probably pronounced that wrong. How embarrassing. Spelled Teutsch. You're not going to be able to read this because it's backwards, but this is how cool this book is. Super old school. Okay. So he writes on page 116. A businessman complaining that his customers did not pay their bills on time was told to change his own habits of being late for appointments and of procrastinating in the discharge of his own obligations. To his delight, his customers started soon to pay him on time. They did not have to be asked or be informed of his changed habits. In the final analysis, you get only what you give. So now that I've given you the opportunity to vent on paper your frustrations, what I challenge you to do this week is to analyze your own behavior, because most likely, almost guaranteed, you are doing this same exact behavior that is driving you mad that someone else is doing. For example, if you start to look around, you realize, oh, I left that cabinet open. Oh, I left that dishwasher open. And maybe the excuse was to let the dishes air dry because there's always a little extra water when the dishwasher is done. I don't understand. Or maybe you leave your cup in a certain spot because that's your spot, you know? So, or maybe you're late because you think they're going to be late, you know? So now your challenge again, today for sure, ideally this week, I want you to pay attention to all of your behaviors, especially those related to the pet peeve you described. Okay? And then what I want you to do is see if the behavior has changed in the other person. Now, it's very, very, very important that you don't go and exaggerate, closing of the cabinets, slamming the cabinets, picking up a glass right in front of your significant other or child or parent. Don't make it obvious, right? This is not about a whole show. And also, don't tell the person, right? Don't tell the person. So I cannot wait to hear the results of this little experiment that you do. And we'll see if Dr. Champion was correct about you get what you give. All right, short one this week. See you next week.